Hi, I'm Roz Naylor. I direct the Center on Food Security and the Environment at Stanford University, and we're really happy to have Ertharin Cousin with us today. Ertharin is the Executive Director of the United Nations World Food Program. She's been in this position since 2012 and has a long history in food security. And Ertharin, I wanted to start by asking you about this history. Going back, what inspired you to work in the area of food security originally? And can you just give us a few highlights of your experience in the past prior to the World Food Program?
Okay, well, thank you, Russ, for having me today and having me here on campus. It's been a real treat. And my history. I'm a lawyer by training. I've been a lawyer for 30 plus years now. But what inspired me to go to law school and ultimately to work in the area of food security is the fact that I was born in a family where this is what you did. You gave back. You worked to support and assist those who were less fortunate. I had parents who, my mom was a social worker. My dad was, as I often say, a community organizer before Barack Obama made it popular to be a community organizer. He never made a lot of money. He owned small businesses, but he was always very much involved in developing new community programs that would support the empowerment of people who otherwise did not have access to the services that they needed, the justice that was required, or even the opportunity to elect candidates of their choosing. My father was the founder of many of those organizations on Chicago's West Side. So we were kids who grew up with people around our table who believed in making change. And so it was easy for me to get involved in this work. And I made a career out of it.
It's so impressive. So the World Food Program employs, I think, 14,000 people in 80 countries. And serves maybe 80 million people a year. So it's a huge, huge task.
Yes.
You've seen success failures and you've seen real challenges. Tell us about some of the success, not only in your administration, but in the past that have sort of set the World Food Program up to where it is today, and some of the successes you've seen personally.
Okay. Well, people often say, zero hunger. You can't achieve zero hunger. You know, no country has ever made any progress. Well, in fact, countries have made progress. If you look at the history of the World Food Program, which started 52 years ago, when we started, China was our largest program. China had a history of the inability to feed its population. And many thought during that period, China would never feed its own people. WFP worked with China along with lots of other organizations, but most importantly, the Chinese government created new policies for agricultural development, agricultural competitiveness that ensured the ability to access hungry people through school meals programs and other social safety net programs. We saw in the Republic of Korea, where Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says that he ate dirt as a child, but he had investments that were made in education and investments that were made in agriculture, and now the Republic of Korea is WFP's 8th largest donor. Brazil, and we all know the story of Zero Fame in Brazil, where through social safety net programs, they reduced hunger down to less than 3%. So we know that the right policies, the right program, accessing the most vulnerable can make a difference, not only for those people that they serve, but ultimately for the GDP of the country.
Yeah, that's an amazing story about Ban Ki-moon especially. I mean, he really comes in with that history, and you come in with the personal history, which is just phenomenal. So there's also huge challenges, and one of the challenges that the World Food Program faces is just these protracted conflicts coupled with now natural disasters and the need for funds to cover so many more people than they did in the past. When you don't have adequate funds, give us a sense of what happens to the people who you can't reach. Does it cause other problems down the road when you can't actually, feed the people you need to feed?
Of course it does. When we don't have access to the necessary funds, it requires us to either reduce the number of people that we serve or to cut the amount of food or assistance that we provide. If we have a nutrition program And we know that a child's ability to live life to its fullest requires receiving the right micronutrients consistently from 0 to 1,000 days. If we don't have enough resources and we cut it off at day 500 and we pick it back up again at day 900, that child will not reach its full physical or mental potential. Yeah. If we cannot provide the appropriate micronutrients to mothers when they're pregnant, we know that child will be born without the full mental or physical capacity. And no matter what you do to develop that child for the remainder of its life, it will never reach its full mental or physical potential. Those are the kinds of effects that occur when we can't reach those who need our assistance.
Yeah, and you just are raising such a challenging issue because there's so much focus today on these protracted conflicts, on the refugee problem, and yet there's tens, hundreds of millions of people that aren't getting the right micronutrients who really need your support sort of day in and day out just at this level. So how has this issue of conflicts and refugees sort of changed the emphasis and the challenges that you have faced as the director of the program?
When I started at WFP, the largest programs that we were operating were climate affected programs. The Sahel, the drought in the Sahel, the drought in East Africa, in Somalia that resulted in the famine. But now, 80% of our largest programs are directly related to conflict. Syria, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Iraq, Yemen. And so funds shift. So the funding that we were receiving in the Sahel, we were fully funded in the Sahel when I came in. We're now only 40% funded in the Sahel because funding shifted to the acute crisis of Syria and the other conflicts that I was just discussing. Same thing in Somalia. We're less than 50% funded in Somalia. And this is at a time when we are preparing to address the challenges of El Nino. We've already had agricultural failures this year, but we're expecting 2016 to have the effects of this El Nino to be the greatest in the history in recorded history of El Nino impacts.
Wow, I'm actually writing a paper on El Nino and food security, so I'm going to be watching this one too. And I think a lot of your donor base actually targets funds to specific areas and specific. How much of it is discretionary or multilateral, and how much is really targeted to specific areas? And how does that constrain what you have the ability to do in terms of?
Yeah, it's the situations that I was just describing to you are not because we want to move funds from the Sahel to Syria or Iraq. It's because 80% of the funding that we receive is targeted by the donors to where they want to invest their dollars. And the reality is the dollars traditionally and historically, the largest share follow the most acute crisis, the crisis that is getting the most attention at that particular moment. And what multilateral donors who don't target funding do is they give us the ability then to fill in those places like the Sahel or Somalia or Bangladesh, where we are addressing more protracted crisis, or in Ethiopia, where we've seen the needs go from 4 million to 8 million because of El Nino, and some are projecting that next year could go as high as 20 million. Our challenge is to ensure that we have a no-regret strategy, which means investing in using multilateral donor dollars to invest in the food that will be necessary to meet the needs that we know of those affected populations from El Nino, so that we don't see large famines. Yeah, and that's the only through multilateral contributions, contributions that are not targeted or earmarked, can we make those kinds of decisions.
So are there certain donors that do this consistently, do multilateral donations? Are there models we should be thinking of?
There are definitely models we should think of. The Scandinavian countries, Norway, the Netherlands, Finland, Denmark have, for the last 10 years, provided WFP with consistent multilateral unearmarked contributions that have given us the ability to make the investments that are necessary. But I need to also give credit to donors like Australia and Canada and even the United States, where some portion of their contribution in the last 2 to 5 years has now been donated to WFP as multilateral funds, giving us more flexibility than what we've had in the past. But we still see a large, if at 80%, we still see the majority of our dollars that are targeted. So we're hopeful that more donors will see that WFP, that we're smart and that we're efficient and that we're the kind of donor that knows how to invest donor dollars, and they'll give us more flexibility.
Yeah, that's great. Well, part of your talk is focused on these, sort of emergencies, obviously coming from, shocks like El Nino and natural disasters like we saw in Nepal last year, as well as the protracted conflicts, which are short to medium term or perhaps long term. But you also have a longer run focus at World Food Program of just providing the ability of regions to become more resilient to shocks in the future. And can you say a little bit about what you're going to talk about on these fronts? You know, how does World Food Program think about the longer run?
Well, first of all, we know that without security, without peace, that none of the work that we can do will create the sustainable, durable food security situations that are required to achieve zero hunger. First of all, and I'll talk a bit about that during my conversation with the students and others here today. But we also know that there are certain strategies, investing in smallholder farmers, investing in social safety nets and social protection programs, and most importantly, investing in providing equity of opportunity for women will ensure our ability to create the agricultural production that is required to support the sustainable and durable food security of the most marginalized people, smallholder farmers. But it will also ensure that we have the social safety net programs that when people can't access food, that the tools are available to them in their countries, in their community, for them to have that food available for their family. And so it's making those kind of long-term investments and changes at the community level, supported by governments, but working with partners. WFP doesn't do this work alone when we're talking about these kinds of long-term changes that will make the difference. And it's also ensuring that when we respond in emergencies, that we're very agile in that response, that we're not just providing food assistance, but that we are providing the support that will build the resilience in those affected populations to help them overcome the crisis and to withstand the next crisis. And that's how we make the difference that will ensure that we can achieve zero hunger.
Yeah, that's a great vision. And of course, you're doing this in a context of climate change now. And I think you've been thinking a lot about what this means in terms of the types of investments or adaptations that might be necessary. Can you just say a few words about World Food Program's vision of how to handle climate change and how to be responsive?
Well, first of all, we know that climate change, we just can't implement policies that will secure a world for the developed community and limit growth in the developing world. And that's why it's important that we invest in the adaptation strategies that are required to ensure the ability of populations to continue to grow their economic bases while also ensuring that we perform that work sustainably, whether it's through smart agriculture or it's through investment in risk mitigation programs that, like insurance, that is climate or weather triggered, or it's investing in new tools like drought-resistant seeds or drought-tolerant seeds, or reducing waste. Because we know that it's not only about increasing production and the quality and quantity of productivity, making that harvest more climate smart and climate adapted, but also it's about ensuring that we eliminate the 40% waste that is lost in post-harvest handling practices in sub-Saharan Africa. So if we increase the quality and quantity of yields, reduce waste, provide viable markets that ensure that we can support and catalyze the continuation of that productivity, then we can begin to ensure that those who are affected by climate have the ability to continue to grow, to feed their families, while also reducing the impact on the environment. That way we all win. It's not just about one part of the world winning. We live on one planet. Everybody needs to win.
Yeah.
And that is what climate adaptation and addressing the challenges of climate require if we are to ensure the outcomes that we want to achieve.
Yeah, that is excellent. So, I mean, that really, I think, sums up a lot of the themes of the talk that you'll give here at Stanford. And Stanford has a lot of work that we're doing is in the climate area, in the national security area, in the food security area, obviously. And so you're hitting on a lot of the themes, but we're also sitting here in the Silicon Valley. How might you want to use the technology or the Silicon Valley as a resource in the future going forward? Are there ways in which we can be helpful in this particular region to the things that you're trying to achieve?
The simple answer is yes. Let me expound upon that very affirmative answer. And we need the kind of capacity that Silicon Valley, the people living here who are entrepreneurs, who are smart thinkers, who are even students, can bring to ensure that we can provide more effective and efficient means for reaching people. Our tools that allow us to provide cash-based transfers, through mobile transfer, through biometric transfers, using satellite data to analyze and assess what is required to give us that agility that I talked about that is necessary to ensure that we're providing the right intervention, to provide opportunities for us to access new financial resources through things like the mobile app that we just launched called Share the Meal, that we couldn't have done without smart young people who have an ability to not only use technology to support business activity, but to provide a new service that's never been attempted before in the humanitarian community. So I'll be very honest with you, we don't know all the ways that technology can help us, which is why I look forward to partnering more with you here at Stanford and others to help us identify new people who can bring us new ideas about how to do this better, how to reach more people, and ultimately how to achieve zero hunger.
That's great. Well, I know there's a lot of students in the audience who have been looking forward to having you here and are really interested in what you do and helping in this area. What advice do you have for students? And I think we'll end on this note.
Well, for students, I say we always need more capable and qualified people. I know we have some students who have worked with WFP as interns. I tell them, please apply. We need smart young people to apply to WFP for internships. But we also need young people to be involved. Part of what we know as true is that we have the tools. We have the right opportunities to address the challenges for zero hunger. We're beginning to see more policies implemented. What we don't have is enough of the public will, and students can drive public will. They can give voice to people who you don't see in other parts of the world. Because if there's anyone who recognizes that this is one planet and that it's not about me, but it's about all of us, it's students, because they're going to inherit the challenges that we leave behind, and they can turn those into opportunities, both from a business standpoint or on an entrepreneurial or a humanitarian standpoint of ensuring that we as a global community move forward together.
Well, that's great advice, and thank you so much for coming to Stanford, and we're looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.